The impossible maneuver. The massive viewing ports of Galactic Trade Station Nexus 7 offered a breathtaking view of the Kepler Nebula, its swirling colors painting space in shades of violet and gold. But today, that beauty was marred by the ominous presence of 12 hegemony warships arranged in a perfect blockade formation around the station. Zixthak's crystalline form hummed with anxiety as he observed the ships through the transparent aluminum barriers. His species, the Velinari, naturally resonated with emotional frequencies, and right now every being on the station was broadcasting fear and frustration in waves that made his entire body vibrate uncomfortably. The station administrator had been in this position before, but never with stakes this high. 300,000 beings called Nexus 7 home, and the medical supplies needed to combat the plague outbreak in the lower sectors were sitting just outside their reach, blocked by the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission, and Zixthak's attention shifted to the communication console. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of a human female with short black hair and determined brown eyes. Nexus 7 Control, this is Captain Sarah Chen aboard the cargo vessel Lucky Break. I'm carrying the medical supplies you requested, but it looks like you've got some unwelcome visitors. Zixthak's form brightened slightly. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 standard years ago. Most species still considered them curiosities rather than serious players in galactic affairs. Their ships were crude, their technology primitive, and their methods often baffling to more established civilizations. Captain Chen, Zixthak replied, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked his species' speech. We are grateful for your arrival, but I fear the situation has become impossible. The hegemony forces have declared a total blockade. No vessel has broken through their formations in over 2 centuries of recorded conflicts. Through the viewing port, Chen's ship became visible as it approached the outer perimeter of the blockade. The Lucky Break was typical of human vessels, a utilitarian design that prioritized function over form. It looked like a flying brick compared to the elegant curves of Velinari architecture or the geometric precision of hegemony warships. Impossible is just another word for haven't tried hard enough. Chen's voice crackled through the speakers. What's their formation pattern? Zixthak manipulated the display controls, highlighting the hegemony ship's positions. They have established overlapping sensor nets and weapons coverage. Any vessel attempting to approach will be detected at maximum range and disabled before reaching the station. Their technology is far superior to anything currently docked here. On the bridge of the Lucky Break, Captain Chen studied the tactical display with the same intensity she had once applied to atmospheric flight patterns back on Earth. Her ship's sensors were indeed primitive compared to hegemony technology, but humans had learned long ago that sometimes the best tool wasn't the most advanced one. Zixthak, I need to know about that asteroid field trailing behind your station. What's the gravitational situation there? The crystalline being's form flickered with confusion. The gravitational situation. Captain, those asteroids are highly unstable. No sane pilot would attempt to navigate through them, especially not with precision cargo like medical supplies. Chen grinned, and something in her expression made the aliens monitoring the conversation unconsciously step back from their displays. It was the kind of smile that had once made saber-toothed tigers reconsider their hunting choices. Good thing I've never been accused of being sane. I'm going to perform what we humans call a duck and go. The translation systems aboard Nexus 7 struggled with the phrase, producing a series of harmonic squeaks and whistles that corresponded to various waterfowl before settling on something roughly equivalent to evasive aquatic maneuver. Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Blockade Force received the transmission intercepts with the kind of calm professionalism that had made him the youngest fleet commander in Hegemony history. His species, the Korthek, valued precision and predictability above all else. Their military victories were won through superior planning, overwhelming force, and absolute adherence to established tactical doctrine. A human cargo pilot believes she can break our blockade, his tactical officer reported, the ridged features of his face arranged in an expression of bemused contempt. Her ship's specifications indicate inferior shielding, limited weapon systems, and propulsion that is barely adequate for interstellar travel. Veltar studied the data streaming across his command console. Human vessels had been observed before, but always at a respectful distance. Their species seemed to understand their limitations and rarely challenged established powers directly. "Maintain standard formation," he ordered. "If the human wishes to demonstrate the futility of defying the hegemony, we shall grant her that opportunity. Perhaps watching her ship disabled will convince the station to surrender the fugitives we seek." Back aboard the Lucky Break, Dr. Marcus Webb was having serious doubts about his decision to accompany this supply run. As the chief engineer for the human colony on Kepler Station, he had volunteered to ensure the medical equipment arrived in working condition. Now he was beginning to wonder if it would arrive at all. "Sarah, please tell me you have an actual plan and aren't just making this up as you go along," he said, watching her fingers dance across the navigation controls with practiced ease. Ken's response was interrupted by another transmission from Nexus 7. This time, multiple alien voices spoke in overlapping harmonies as various department heads tried to offer advice or express their concerns. "Captain Chen," came Zixthak's primary voice through the chaos. "We have been analyzing your flight path, and our computers indicate you are heading directly toward the most gravitationally unstable region of the asteroid field. Even our most advanced ships avoid that area." "That's the idea," Chen replied, beginning to adjust her ship's trajectory in ways that made the inertial dampeners whine in protest. "The thing about us humans is that we spent most of our evolutionary history being prey animals. We got really good at two things: running away and hiding. Sometimes you combine both." The Lucky Break began to accelerate toward the asteroid field, but not in any pattern that made sense to the watching aliens. Instead of taking a direct route or attempting to use the asteroids for cover, Chen was deliberately heading for the most chaotic region, where gravitational forces from multiple large asteroids created unpredictable tidal effects. "The human has lost her mind," Commander Veltar observed as his sensors tracked the cargo ship's approach. "She's flying directly into a gravitational maze. Even if our weapons don't disable her, the conflicting forces will tear her ship apart." His tactical officer nodded agreement, but something in the human pilot's behavior nagged at the back of his consciousness. Humans were known for their unpredictability, but this seemed like suicide rather than strategy. Chen's fingers flew over her controls, making micro-adjustments to her ship's attitude and thrust vectors with a precision that would have impressed any flight instructor. But she wasn't flying by computer calculations or established navigation protocols. Instead, she was relying on something far more primitive and infinitely more flexible: intuition. "Marcus, remember what I told you about duck hunting back home?" she asked, not taking her eyes off the swirling asteroid field ahead of them. "You said it was about patience and knowing when to move," Webb replied, gripping his restraints as the ship shuddered through another gravitational gradient. "Exactly. You don't chase the duck. You figure out where it's going and wait for it to come to you. But sometimes," Chen's grin widened as she executed a maneuver that sent them diving toward a cluster of rotating asteroids, "sometimes you have to make the duck think it knows where you're going, and then you go somewhere else entirely." The hegemony sensors lost the Lucky Break as it disappeared into the asteroid field's gravitational shadow. Commander Veltar leaned forward in his command chair, every tactical instinct he possessed suddenly screaming warnings. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we've lost sensor contact with the human vessel. The gravitational interference from the asteroids is creating multiple false readings." "Impossible," Veltar muttered, but even as he said it, he began to understand what the human pilot was attempting. "She's using the asteroid's gravity wells to mask her ship's signature. But that would require navigating by." His words trailed off as the implications hit him. No sane pilot would attempt to fly through that gravitational chaos without computer assistance. The calculations required were beyond most organic minds, the variables too numerous and complex for anything but the most advanced tactical computers. Unless the pilot wasn't trying to calculate a path at all. Unless they were doing something far more dangerous and primitive. Unless they were flying by instinct alone. The human way. The lucky break materialized from the asteroid field like a ghost ship emerging from a fog bank, but not from any direction the hegemony forces had been watching. Instead of appearing from the obvious exit points that their tactical computers had predicted, Chen's vessel came streaking out of a narrow canyon between two massive asteroids that should have been gravitationally impossible to navigate. Commander Veltar stared at his tactical display in stunned silence. The human ship had somehow used the conflicting gravitational fields not as obstacles to avoid, but as a transportation network to slingshot through space in ways that defied conventional understanding of orbital mechanics. How did she calculate those trajectories? His tactical officer demanded, frantically trying to plot an intercept course. Our computers show that flight path is having a 0% probability of success. She didn't calculate them. Veltar realized, his respect for human capabilities undergoing a fundamental revision. She felt them. Humans navigate like their atmospheric predators used to hunt, by intuition and adaptability rather than precise calculation. The lucky break wasn't done surprising everyone. As the hegemony ships moved to intercept, Chen executed another maneuver that sent chills through every military tactician watching. Instead of trying to outrun the superior hegemony vessels, she deliberately flew her ship into the gravitational wake of one of the warships, using its own mass to accelerate beyond what her primitive engines should have been capable of achieving. She's drafting behind our lead interceptor, Veltar's navigation officer reported in disbelief. The human is using our own ship's gravimetric signature to increase her velocity. That should be impossible with her level of technology. On the bridge of the lucky break, Chen was completely focused on her controls, her human reflexes operating on levels that most aliens couldn't comprehend. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey for days across varied terrain by reading subtle environmental cues and adapting their strategies in real time. Those same instincts, refined by generations of atmospheric pilots who had learned to read wind patterns and thermal columns, were now being applied to the three-dimensional maze of gravitational fields surrounding Nexus 7. Sarah. Dr. Webb called out, his voice tight with both fear and admiration. You do realize you're rewriting several textbooks on astrodynamics right now. Tell the textbooks they've been thinking too small, Chen replied, executing a microburn that sent them spiraling around another asteroid in a trajectory that should have resulted in a catastrophic collision, but instead catapulted them directly toward the station's docking bay. The hegemony forces found themselves in the unprecedented position of being outmaneuvered by technology they had dismissed as primitive. Their superior sensors and weapons were useless against a pilot who refused to follow predictable flight patterns. Every time they anticipated her next move, Chen did something that their computers categorized as tactically impossible. Aboard Nexus 7, the docking bay controllers were frantically clearing a path as the lucky break approached at what appeared to be suicidal velocity. Automated systems screamed warnings about excessive approach speed and improper vector alignment, but Chen's ship somehow managed to thread the needle between two larger vessels and settle into the docking cradle with the gentle precision of a falling leaf. Zixthak was waiting in the docking bay when the airlock cycled open, his crystalline form resonating with frequencies of amazement and gratitude. Captain Chen emerged first, followed by Dr. Webb, who looked like he was still trying to convince himself that they had survived the journey. Captain Chen, Zixthak began, but words seemed inadequate for what he had just witnessed. That was, how did you know those gravitational currents would support your flight path? Chen shrugged, already directing the unloading of the medical supplies that would save thousands of lives in the station's lower sectors. Back on Earth, my grandfather taught me to hunt ducks on a lake near our farm. He used to say that the secret wasn't knowing where the duck was going, but understanding how the wind and water would carry it there. Space isn't really that different, just bigger. The simplicity of her explanation only made the achievement more remarkable to the aliens present. She had treated the vast complexity of gravitational interactions as if they were merely weather patterns to be read and interpreted through experience rather than calculation. Dr. Webb was busy checking the medical equipment, but he overheard Zixthak's next question. "Captain, how did you learn to navigate in such an intuitive manner?" "Trial and error, mostly," Chen admitted. "Plus about 10,000 hours of atmospheric flight time in everything from crop dusters to emergency medical transports. Humans have been flying by feel for almost 2 centuries now. We just applied the same principles to space." Commander Veltar's voice crackled through the station's communication system as his fleet maintained position outside the asteroid field. "Nexus 7 Control, this is Hegemony Commander Veltar. We acknowledge that the medical supplies have been successfully delivered. The blockade remains in effect for all other traffic." There was something different in the commander's tone, a note of respect that hadn't been there before. Zixthak responded carefully, understanding that the balance of power in this confrontation had shifted in ways that no one had anticipated. "Understood, Commander. We are grateful for your accommodation in this matter." As the medical teams rushed to distribute the life-saving supplies throughout the station, Chen found herself surrounded by aliens from dozens of different species, all eager to understand how she had accomplished what their combined technologies had deemed impossible. A Trisk engineer with 6 arms gestured frantically as he tried to express his amazement. "Captain, our navigation computers have analyzed your flight path through the asteroid field. The trajectory changes you made should have required processing power beyond what your ship possesses. How did you calculate the gravitational interactions in real time?" Chen looked around at the gathered crowd of beings, each representing civilizations with thousands of years of technological advancement, all staring at her in wonder because she had done something they considered impossible with tools they considered primitive. "I didn't calculate anything," she explained patiently. "I watched how the asteroids moved, felt how my ship responded to the gravitational pulls, and adjusted accordingly. It's like..." She paused, searching for an analogy they might understand. "It's like learning to walk. You don't calculate the precise muscle movements needed to maintain balance. You just practice until your body knows what to do." Dr. Webb smiled as he watched the alien faces struggle to process this concept. Humans had always been good at making the complex seem simple and the impossible seem routine. It was one of their most endearing and terrifying qualities. The crowd began to disperse as the immediate crisis passed, but Zixthak remained with the 2 humans, his crystalline form still humming with residual excitement from the day's events. "Captain Chen," he said carefully, "I believe there are many in the galaxy who have underestimated human capabilities. Your species may be young by galactic standards, but you possess qualities that our more established civilizations seem to have lost." "What qualities are those?" Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "The ability to attempt the impossible without first calculating why it cannot be done," Zixthak replied. "The willingness to trust instinct over technology when the situation demands it. The courage to try something new rather than relying only on proven methods." As they spoke, Commander Veltar was addressing his own officers aboard the lead hegemony vessel. The successful supply run had not technically violated the terms of their blockade, but it had accomplished something far more significant. It had demonstrated that humans were not the primitive newcomers that most galactic civilizations believed them to be. "Sir," his tactical officer ventured, "should we adjust our assessment of human military capabilities?" Veltar considered the question carefully. The cargo ship that had just outmaneuvered his entire battle group possessed no weapons, no advanced shielding, and no sophisticated electronic countermeasures. Its only advantage had been a pilot who thought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. "Update our files," he ordered finally. "Note that humans possess tactical unpredictability as a species characteristic. Their technology may be primitive, but their thinking is adaptive in ways that make conventional threat assessment difficult." Back on Nexus 7, Captain Chen was already preparing for her return journey, but the implications of her successful supply run would ripple through the galactic community for years to come. She had done more than deliver medical supplies. She had announced humanity's presence as a force to be recognized and respected. As the Lucky Break departed the station, using a conventional flight path this time, Zixthak watched from the observation deck. The human captain had shown them something important: that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to stop thinking of it as impossible and start thinking of it as just another challenge to overcome. In the months that followed, human pilots began to appear throughout the galaxy, taking on seemingly impossible contracts and succeeding through methods that baffled more established civilizations. They became known for their willingness to attempt what others wouldn't, their ability to find solutions where others saw only problems, and their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The galaxy was a very large place, full of ancient civilizations, with technologies beyond human comprehension. But as Captain Sarah Chen had proven above Nexus 7, sometimes the oldest and most sophisticated civilizations needed to be reminded that there was more than one way to navigate through the darkness between the stars. And sometimes, the best way forward was simply to duck and go.